Hello and welcome to the first North Huron Museum Committee meeting. Seeing how we have a quorum here now, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Amanda Piskorski. I'm a staff member here at North Huron, and I'm also the secretary treasurer for the meeting. My role is also to prepare the agendas and minutes for the meetings, and I'm also going to chair the first start of this meeting until we appoint one later on. So the first order of business is welcome and introduction. So why don't we go around the table and you can introduce yourselves and maybe say a little bit about if you're on the organization you're representing today. So whoever wants to start.
Okay, I'm Joan Vandermeer. I live here in Wingham. I am a retired Community Economic Development Project Manager, which I'm also extremely interested in museums and have been my entire life. So that sums me up.
I'm Bill Cornell, and I was the former chair of the Friends of the Museum when it was operating yearly. I've lived in Wingham most of my life, and I've had a lifelong interest in museums and history, and majored in archaeology and history, and therefore continue to go to museums.
I'm Betty Lou Cull, and I live in two places. I live here on the Marnock line half my week, and the other half I live in Waterloo County on the Huron Road, which is a historic road too. And I worked with two of these people, one on each side of me, when we worked at the museum. And I too have always been interested in museum work. Castle Kilbride is in Baden, and I was involved in that project for a very long time. And I was on the steering committee for the regional new museum, the Ken Sealing Museum. And so I do not like to think that this community will be without that cultural dimension, however it works out.
I'm Dixie Lee Arbuckle. I'm representing the Wingham District Horticultural Society. I was also a volunteer with the museum, and I've lived in this area for a little over 40 years, some of it in Wingham and currently just outside of Wingham in Morris Turnberry. And I'm certainly passionate about maintaining the heritage and the history and the gardens.
My name is Paul Heffer. I'm a counselor in North Huron, in Wingham Ward, and I've been here 65 years. And, love the town and want to keep it that way. Thank you.
I'm Verna Steffler, and I'm here representing the Alice Munro Festival. And I'm a big fan of Alice Munro, and therefore I've been very interested in the museum and putting together the Alice Munro exhibit. I've been here, I guess, 65 years now too in Wingham, and I'm very devoted to this town. I think you have to be involved if you want to make changes. Anyway, I've also been a part of the Friends of the Museum since the committee came back into existence. So I'm hoping that we can keep our museum.
And my name's Doug Kuyvenhoven. I'm just turning 60 years old this year.
A young one.
And yeah, there you go. It's all perspective. My wife and I enjoy going to museums. We travel to different places, and we scoot around Ontario too. And we do the backwoods of Ontario and often end up in little town museums, or Newfoundland, the East Coast, and stuff like that. And so as I've gotten older, I've more appreciated the importance of the history of museums and not losing this history and artifacts. I think we moved to Wingham in moved to Wingham when I was in 1971, I was 12 years old, and, or 11, something like that. And so like, that was my dad, he started Royal Homes at the time. And so, anyway, so I love the town as well. I'm very grateful to live here in Wingham, the surrounding area. And obviously my wife and I are pro seeing the museum maintained and or reopened really, to see the museum reopened and the great story that Wingham has to tell. We've got all kinds of history and CKNX and Alice Munro, and there's lots more. And so I just think it's extremely important to keep that. And the added bonus, I represent the Wingham BIA here. I'm representing the Wingham BIA, which I'm the chairman of that. I was going to say, from a BIA perspective, the added bonus of having an information center as part of the new location would really be a bonus. And of course, the handicap accessibility of the train station is going to be a real plus. Plus, it's a historic building as well, so it suits well for that. It was actually my wife's suggestion and my daughter said that train station could be a good museum. So there we are.
Hi, I'm Vicki Lutenberger. I'm the new Director of Recreation and Community Services. Sort of new to the area and sort of not. I lived here about 30 years ago, and not in Wingham, but in Howick. And so I was familiar with the area, and I just took the position here last October. Prior to that, I was at Wilmot Township, which is how I know Lou, and had worked in the recreation department there for 28 years.
Okay, so now that we know everyone, the next item of business on the agenda is the election of the chair. So because it's in our terms of reference, we have to appoint somebody today. So upon passing, the appointed person will assume the chair, so come up and sit here. And pretty much they call the meeting to order, they adjourn the meeting and everything in between. So getting a mover and seconder, all in favors to each of the motions, and I'm here to help. So would anybody like to nominate anyone for chair?
I'll nominate Bill Farnell.
I was gonna nominate.
I would love not to be the chair.
I guess I can understand that, but,
Okay, Bill, do you accept the nomination?
gee, that's a tough one. 'Cause I hadn't thought of that at all. I just don't know how much of a workload this is going to be. I would like to know more about the tasks this committee has to develop and present before I, you know what I mean? I just don't know enough.
Yeah, sure. Maybe after we go over the terms of reference, we can revisit this. So we can-
Look, I think it's running the meeting, you've got great support from Amanda,
But
and the
it's-
work is the committee to do.
Mhm.
It's not running the meeting, it's the job that we have to do. I don't know what
Yeah, and that's the team effort.
precisely what that is.
Yeah, that would be the team.
Yeah. You just sit back and order us around.
So as the chair, yeah, you pretty much go through the agenda and make sure it's on time, and you go through each point, and I can help you for sure through each and every one of those, until you get the hang of it.
We can table it.
Yeah.
And give it some time for you to think about it.
Was there any other nominations? So I'll call for a third and final time for nominations.
Cool. Amanda, are we kind of tabling this spot though?
Oh, sure.
Because then
yeah.
we,
Okay.
then we will have our opportunity.
So we can move on then. Number 3 is confirmation of the agenda. So here you're pretty much confirming that the agenda looks good and you want to go ahead with the meeting. So I do need a mover for the motion. And a seconder.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, so the motion has passed that the North Huron Museum Committee meeting accept the agenda for the August 22nd committee meeting as presented. So item 3.1 is the summary of the standing agenda items. So in this report, we explain the purpose and any requirements associated with the standing agenda items on the agenda. So it's pretty much giving you a definition of all those, so you'll be seeing those in every agenda to come. So for example, what we just did to accept and amend the current agenda, it's going to be presented at every meeting. And another, so for members to declare, which is number 4, the members must declare that they have a financial interest on the agenda every meeting. So because the agenda changes all the time, this has to be a standing item on the agenda. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can come to myself or Vicki or Carson, our clerk, if you have any questions.
Good. Are you at declaration of pecuniary interest?
I will go there now.
Oh, I thought that's where you were. Okay, carry on.
So, number 4, if there's not any questions with that, does anyone want to declare a pecuniary interest?
More of a, for the record, right? I mean, I think it's known to the committee, my wife and I have offered the museum property and building to the town, provided it's used for a museum for the next 20 years. Right?
Train station.
Oh, I keep doing that. The train station. I'm involved in theater so much. So, the train station. So, and I've asked the question of the clerk, like, is there any pecuniary interest in that? There is absolutely no financial gain for my wife or myself. So, I don't believe that it is a pecuniary interest, or that I need to declare as a pecuniary interest, but just for the record, that the committee's aware, that all committee members are aware of that situation. And because there is zero financial gain to myself and my wife, I don't believe that there is, and so I just want the record to stand on that. Any questions from the committee or the staff?
Okay, I'll definitely record that in a minute, so it's.
I don't think there's anything you're going to gain. You're giving it, so you're not getting any funds out of it, so
$1.
you're giving it away.
$1.
Yeah, $1.
That's just for legal purposes.
That's right.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, so.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Paul?
No, I think you explained it very well.
I'm not looking for credibility or, who's the cause of that, that's, just,
So I think making your statement is enough.
okay.
Yeah.
So we're all aware of it, and the public's aware of it, and, for sure. It's,
Okay, great, thanks Doug. So number 5 is public comment on the agenda. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to an item of business on the agenda for 2 minutes. It doesn't look, there's not much on the agenda this time, so it doesn't look like there's much. Number 6, minutes of the previous meeting, there's none, but next time there'll be this one. There's no delegations as of yet. And the reports, the terms of reference is first, so Vicki, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. In your packages, there was a copy of the committee's terms of reference. The terms of reference provide some background information into how, the decision-making process, which kind of brought us to this point today, because this has been discussed well over a year, almost 2 years, I believe now, that there's been discussion about it. The terms of reference also explains that the mandate of the committee is to facilitate a decision to relocate the museum to the former train station. To facilitate that decision, council has tasked the committee with developing a work plan that would consist of a project plan, a fundraising plan, and an operational plan to demonstrate that it would be actually feasible to do that. The terms of reference also identifies composition of the committee in terms of how many members from the public would be sitting on it, as well as the membership from the different groups that are present here. The term of the committee is basically the term of council, which is until 2022. Township resources have been allocated to the committee, which is basically myself and Amanda, to be liaisons with, for myself, it's to be a liaison with the committee to, say, county or provincial professionals and things regarding museum operations. Amanda already outlined what she is here to do and assist with. At this point, there is no budget for the committee. It's all investigative report, but should the committee require any financial resources, I will take a report forward to council for their consideration. As mentioned, the role of the committee is to do a work plan consisting of that project plan, operational plan, and fundraising plan. That plan, the final decision, based on the information that's brought forward, that will help council in making a final decision as to whether or not to move the museum program to the train station. The terms of reference also lists a number of policies and procedures, or township policies and procedures that have to be adhered to. And we've included a number of them in your package, and any of the ones that are not in your package, such as the provincial acts, there is a link on the agenda for them for you to review, and we would like for you to take a look at those items before the next meeting.
Thanks, Vicky. Is there any questions to what Vicky talked about?
I just have a comment. If we're not going to have printed out packages, and I understand that, could we at least have the documents up so that
The agenda?
not the agenda, the documents, so that as we're talking about the terms of reference, we're refreshing our memories, oh yeah, that's what they are. Because I'm trying to get it on here,
Mhm.
and the link doesn't work
Okay.
to pull it up, so.
Yeah, we can figure that out for next meeting.
Would you like me to go into more detail and read over the terms of reference? Would
No,
that be
but I
helpful?
think it would be helpful if they were just there, right?
In this case, it's like 100 pages, so you-
Oh, it's that long? Okay.
This
I
one,
thought-
this one was.
Oh, okay, because when I read the original,
yeah, there's,
what we were given, it wasn't, no, I don't want to read
the
it.
attachment was 104 pages,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that would be, you wouldn't,
yeah,
If
no,
you
no,
wanna
no,
look-
I get it,
Okay.
I
yeah,
think that, but if it's a smaller amount, then any committee member that wants a printed copy
Yeah.
can maybe request it of Amanda and then pick it up for,
right.
so, does that sound fair to everybody? If you need a printed copy, then just request Amanda, she'll print it. Because you won't be able to look at it, there's
No,
only a little bit that'll show up on the screen, and then you'll be like, I need to see a little further, past.
yeah, well, if the links would work, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so,
Do you mean though that there's more terms of reference than what we were
no,
given?
no, what's in here, so the terms of reference was a document this size.
Yeah.
But what
Yes.
we've attached in here are the accountability and transparency policy that the township has in place. There is the procedural bylaw that governs the meetings. There is the procurement policy for services, and that's a very thick document. It's 100, or it's about 40-some pages. So
And then the
overall,
acts are-
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then that's why the links for the acts was put on there too, because it'd been even larger, so.
Somebody will put us in place if we're not doing the right thing.
I know.
Yeah.
Try my best.
So, if you would like, though, I can go over more detail on the terms of reference.
No, I've read it all, I
Okay.
just
Just wanted that brief.
find it,
I'd
just
like
to
a
have
copy.
an agenda is,
Yeah, so,
Yep.
it's just for the next meeting, then what if we need stuff printed? Lou,
You need a whole copy, Lou,
I would like one,
of everything?
yeah.
of the
thanks.
104 pages,
Well,
there's a lot of gobbledygook in there.
I mean, you
Yeah,
can
I
edit
put that.
if you think that things I don't need to know, I don't mind that, but
Yeah.
I really would like to have it in my hand.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's no
okay.
problem with doing that,
Yeah, okay, thanks very much.
yeah. So I know there's a lot of things listed under number 8, and I covered kind of a lot of things in there. Is there anything in particular that you would like to discuss in more detail? Bill, you were talking about the role, kind of knowing more about the role of committee and things. Have you had a chance to read that terms of reference at all?
I read the terms of reference, and that's it.
Okay,
Um,
because the terms
But I
of,
think if I was to be chair, I definitely want to read everything,
yes.
you know, which I haven't.
Yeah, so the terms of reference does provide kind of that role or overview of what's expected, like, just going back to it, it says, you know, the work plan is to develop, the work plan will basically consist of those different things I was discussing, the project plan, operational plan, and a fundraising plan. The project plan, the purpose of that is, I'll just read it straight from here. It says to develop a project plan indicating how the relocation and establishment of a museum at the former train station in Wingham will be undertaken. The project plan will identify the objectives, approach, timeline, and estimated costs for each stage of the project. And then there's the museum operational plan. That's to develop a museum operation plan which will include governance model, funding model, details, and guiding principles for the day-to-day operations of the museum after relocation. And then the fundraising plan is to develop a plan that would, basically they want you to outline the approach and timing for raising the funds to undertake the activities and ongoing operation of the museum. So that in a nutshell is kind of basically what the
Easy.
committee's
Easy.
well, I won't say it's easy.
The
But what the
problem
committee-
is, at this moment in time, not one of us knows what we're going to be doing. And so anything that you can reference 2 months, 3 months down the road is why you want it. Because then you want to be able to look it up and reread, and because you may be part of something you don't even know you're going to be part of now. So,
Can you explain that further, Lou? What do you-
it's just, it seems like a silly thing to ask you to provide us with pages and pages and pages of things to read, but you don't know when you'd like to sit down and read a portion of something, because all of a sudden, you're on a select part of a committee that is going to be addressing these in more detail, you know.
Mhm.
So you don't have to do it right now, but along the line, that's why I would want it.
Mhm.
I want to sit at my own desk and read my own stuff.
Mhm.
To me, if it's part of the package, I generally read everything ahead of time, which I have done, but it's been a few weeks, right? And that's why I like to have a link or to refresh my mind. And I don't keep paper, but I like, if it's in a package, I like to be able to access it.
Sure, I mean, we can do printed packages for everyone, that's not an issue.
I would just print it for the ones that ask for it. So we know that Joan and Lou want to print it, and Bill. Anybody else want to print it?
I don't know if I want to read that, but I'm just wondering if there's, for a future meeting, would it be worthwhile, if there's an item on the agenda to which, let's see, the accountability policy applies, then maybe we should have the germ of how that's going to affect that, what we do with that item. Or if it's something to do with freedom of information and protection of privacy, if we've got something on our agenda that could be impacted by that, then maybe we need to know that. And so be sure to reread this section. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
that does make sense.
But I don't want all of that paper. I mean, I can read it online if I know that it's relevant to what I'm going to be discussing at the meeting.
3 of these want printed.
I might as well have a copy
There's
then,
4.
see what's gonna happen that way.
They will say who doesn't
You
need it
too,
printed.
Paul? Okay,
I don't need it, I don't like it.
I'm a
But we
printed
want it for
person.
this.
No,
Just so
I
you
want
guys
the
know.
links to
Oh.
work, so that when when I was online the other day, the links work. Today, when I'm trying to access it at the meeting,
Oh,
it doesn't
Is it
work.
just because it's your phone or?
I don't know.
must be,
Well,
because
I haven't
they
been
do work.
using my laptop,
Yeah.
because I can't right now.
No, that's fine.
See, I'm old school, I like to have paper in front
We'll
of
give
me
you
so I can
pen.
make notes, so,
Sure.
yeah, so.
Let's do it.
Doug's Doug can do it on the computer, I'm a little bit more,
Well, I mean, I print the agenda, and I have the terms of reference already printed, so maybe
yeah,
when I look at all that other legal schmiegel, I need to see it.
so what we can do then is we'll make copies of everything for those who want it. And things, so that you can have it to review and things.
How many people have we not got present today?
Two.
Brock, and who's the other one?
Gabe.
David.
Dave, oh, Dave Wall, yeah, that's right, Dave's at, East Coast right now, Dave Wall.
Would you like me to read the accountability?
No, I've read it.
Oh, okay.
It's just when you were talking about the specific, I'm not gonna dwell on it, just leave it.
So would we like to move on to our election now, or would you like to postpone it till next time?
What are you thinking, Bill?
I think I'd like to wait.
Sure.
Should I?
Well, I got a fellow over here that's willing to.
No, I'm not going to take it away from Bill, but I
Oh,
will.
not that,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'm just coming back after 2 years of not being well.
Yeah, I understand.
And literally in the last month, I've begun to feel like I am back to the person I was. And it's still a little bit tenuous, I feel.
Mhm.
That's why I hope this stays, but I don't know for sure, so.
Well, I'll nominate Paul.
I'll second that.
I'd support you
Paul,
100%.
do you
Really, like,
accept?
I don't want to interfere at all. I don't
No,
want-
I would just feel more, I'd feel better.
I heard you talking earlier and I realized.
So Paul, sorry, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Yes. And then I think I heard that Verna moved the motion and Doug seconded it?
That's right.
So that the North Huron Museum Committee hereby appoint Paul Pepper as chairperson to the North Huron Museum Committee. Is everyone in favor?
It's unanimous.
P.S. I need lots of help, okay? I just want to make you aware. This is all new for me, okay?
No, I mean, the chair doesn't do all the work.
No,
they all
definitely
do it.
doesn't.
No,
You just
I
keep,
mean, I remember what you said earlier, that you'd help
keep the
out.
meeting on track.
the nice thing is, you're making the agendas
Yes,
and doing all the
and I'm
stuff,
right
so.
here with you.
I'm used to, as a chair, having to generate my own agendas, so
Yeah.
that's a pretty sweet deal.
Alright. So the next item is correspondence, but we don't have any today. So number 10 is next steps. So I think Vicki already mentioned maybe the review of reports to go through.
Mhm.
Is there any other next steps we should be thinking of?
I mean, my question would be, you know, how soon do we kick into gear on some of this stuff, okay? For instance, the project plan, which I understand would be the actual physical preparation of the building to become a museum and the movement of the artifacts into the museum, okay? Is that the correct understanding of the project?
Yes. You're looking at the timeline and what the cost will be.
Yeah, the time and the cost to be. So, I know that Jody Jerome has said she would volunteer her time. She loves the museum, it's her baby. And so she has been a curator in the past, so she knows the museum rules, regs, and all that kind of stuff, and is intimately aware of all the artifacts. So she's willing to serve on a subcommittee to help develop this project plan. I'm in construction, and I know the train station inside out, and have set the idea of moving the three-car garage over beside the train station and joining the train station to form additional display and/or storage area. So I'd be willing to serve, you know, like if we want to break this task down a wee bit. I don't know a museum operation plan to boots, but there's a bunch of friends in museums that are very familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
And so if we were to break, if we wanted to get working between now and the next meeting, you know, I'd be willing to serve on and head up the project plan. And if the committee is okay with Joey joining that, and then if someone else would join that, then we would have a threesome that could start to work on that. If that seems reasonable to the chair. I guess, well, you're supposed to move, man.
Spoiled.
It's okay, Paul.
Yeah.
We'll get you next time.
Why do you not walk it
No,
around?
it's okay.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
I was just,
Yeah, I
You
spoke
worry.
about it.
you said you were supposed to move in the middle.
I saw that too.
So I don't know what, you know, whether that's a
Yeah.
plan to start breaking this job down and get rolling a bit.
Yeah,
and I think, to my mind, the museum operation plan, that's where we want to talk to Elizabeth French Gibson, is that the correct name? From
She's
Huron
Goddard.
County
Yeah.
for
She's God's creator.
guidance there,
Yep.
because she has all the expertise that we could possibly need.
and I want to just comment that I was helping out with a major project over the summer at the museum. That is, they were doing a textile inventory, 250 boxes of material, anything that you wore or is made of some sort of material, be it leather or cotton or whatever. And I'm learning that the rules of deaccessioning and also the rules of acceptance have been rewritten since Verna and I and the rest of us met 10 years ago. And so I think it's really important that we do have somebody who, we should see a document of that. We haven't done that. So that's something we need to consider as well.
So is everyone familiar that in order to move the museum to the train station, that deaccessioning will have to take place? Is everyone aware of that?
No, and
I'd like to hear about that.
but, now, in speaking with Jody, right, who knows the rules, now maybe some of the rules change. If we are simply moving artifacts to the train station, nothing's getting deaccessioned. It's only the stuff that we're getting rid of that has to be deaccessioned,
Right.
Right.
okay?
Yes.
And once we work out the working plan, the project plan, we will know how much capacity we have for storing artifacts at the train station and be able to figure out how much attention needs to get deaccessioned. And it might not be much, okay? It might not be much less get deaccessioned.
But I think you have to, sorry, before you do deaccession, you have to decide what is it that we want to feature, what do we want to keep? Because there's an awful lot of stuff in there that, you know, with good intentions found its way into the museum, but really doesn't belong.
Right.
So that whole sorting process first is going to take quite a bit of time.
It's kind of gonna be hand in hand, isn't it? Like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
project plan and how much capacity we have, and then what
So,
do we need to potentially filter out is gonna kind of go hand in hand. Because you won't, until you know what you got.
I would like a statement here, because I'm out of the loop here. If I didn't have Bill's good phone call, I wouldn't be here. But I would like to hear somebody make a statement as to where you are at in moving from across the road to another building when this building never did meet the standard. And if we're going to call ourselves a museum, and if we're going to look for any kind of supportive grants from our provincial government and other, I would like to know where we have gone in the background here before we're even sitting here together to say this has been accepted on a level that says we can call ourselves a museum just by moving from across the street, up the street.
So is that maybe the series of reports that the staff created that brought us to this point, I'm wondering? I mean, some of us were able to attend some of those council meetings and hear those reports going back to previous council leading up. I'm wondering if that's the kind of background that,
So
We're
maybe at
looking
the next
for.
meeting, we should review those reports. We should go through those reports and bring everything forward as to how we've arrived at this point in time and things like that. Is that what you're kind of looking for?
Well, I'm just saying, there are a lot, as I understand the whole process, there are a lot of dimensions to calling yourself a museum having a building that qualifies as a museum, the whole looking into the future for what kind, like I hear you say there is no money at this moment. Well, are we just flying on our own interest and determination that it'll happen, or do we actually have some legitimate baselines of professionals telling us this could even work? Like,
So
that's
just-
what I need to know.
Okay, so just touching, and I, again, I'm new here, Lou, there was a museum board, management board that was in place, some documentation for all kinds of things, policies and procedures and everything. And my understanding is that the artifacts that are in the museum across the street have all been logged and things, so they're all recorded and logged. In terms of the money that I was discussing, it was meant for this committee, not the museum itself. Is this committee, as it functions, there is no money for this committee to do anything. If you needed money to, I don't know, bring in a professional speaker or someone to educate you or something like that, then I would go forward to council and ask for permission to ask for that money to do so.
Oh,
That's- That's what I meant, and things. So, the building across the street has a budget, it's still operating, we're keeping it operating in terms of, maintaining it. But, in terms of the future operation of the museum, programming at a different location, that's where they're looking for, the committee to come up with some kind of plan, whether it's through volunteers or whatnot, and what that would look like. We can come up with operational costs for the train station building, but the actual operation as to whether or not it has staffing or it is run by volunteers and if it has traveling exhibits and, what is the vision? What is the vision of that museum and determining what those costs would be. But part of it also will be in determining if there is the deaccessioning that would occur, what that cost would be for deaccessioning, construction costs or relocation costs of the shed. So you may not be aware, but there was discussion about the square footage of that building down there. It's not as large as the one across the street, but on that property is a three-bay shed at the back that could be relocated next to it, and a connection made there to provide more square footage. So maybe we need to back up just a little bit and provide some background, I think.
When this museum had a curator and it was open, I believe it was classified as a museum. But we need to know what the definition of say provincially, what the definition of a museum is, because from my understanding, when it was only opened in the summertime for the summer student, it was not classed as a museum.
I believe you're correct.
So we need to know legally the definition of a working museum.
I'd sort of like to know if the building itself will qualify as a museum. I think that's where we have to start, because if it doesn't, well then we have to look at what needs to be done to make it qualify, or you have to say, I guess we can't use it. But I think that we can sit here and spin our wheels for days, but if we don't know that we can actually use the train station as a museum, there's no sense doing anything until we know.
Good point.
And I think Jody Jerome can enlighten us hugely on that whole area.
Maybe she should.
She is a curator,
Yeah.
so that's why I was suggesting she be part of the subcommittee. Is let's hear from her, and we can invite her to the next meeting to actually be here to speak and answer questions and that kind of stuff. But I totally agree, we gotta make sure that, well, part of the project plan is the cost of preparing the train station to be a museum.
Right.
And
And
so
she
we,
ran up against things that she knew perfectly well would make it qualify, that nobody would buy into. And so there's no sense, as Verna says, there's no sense already being against a wall.
no, I agree, yeah, so that's part of that project plan subcommittee, has gotta find out the regs, find out what's involved, and
The other
address
thing
those
that I
things.
remember is when I was speaking with Jody, this is a few years ago, but I don't know if it's still there. There is an accreditation process for museums.
Yes.
So in other words, you could be at level, I'll say A is the low one, right? Level A, and you're fundraising to do level B, which would be improvement in storage or whatever. So I think we need to have some background knowledge. Is that still the way it's done? So in other words, you could be a novice museum. You don't have to have everything, you don't have to have everything done right away. I think you can work towards it, but I don't know that for sure. It's been years since.
So let's make that an action item for the next meeting,
Yeah,
is
It
let's
was-
find out what the levels of museum are, what the regulations are,
Right.
and then looking at how that applies then to the train
See,
station.
even if we're just level one, but it's at a museum,
Mhm.
yes, at
I
least you
think
got your
if
foot in
we
the door.
have Jody actually go and look at the train station, and if she can answer some of our questions, why then we know where we're at.
Yeah, and I can pull some of the I've already pulled
She's
some of
got
this
it.
information already. And things, I just didn't have that with me today, I didn't think that we were gonna get into that level of detail, so, I can certainly pull that information and look. I know in reading some of the information, from the province and things, that, there are small community museums out there that do not get funding from the province and things that still exist, so.
Well, I just went this past summer to the Donnelly Museum. And it's not just the Donnelly Museum, it is also has a municipal museum as part of it as well.
Mhm.
But again, Verna, that's Lucan. It's Lucan you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's wonderful, but we've been there, Bill. And,
Yes.
you know, their buildings are buildings that have just been given. And they don't qualify
They don't.
at all,
Okay.
no. At least, maybe they've changed since I've been there. But, you know, they're a wonderful local museum, but they don't qualify for anything you want to call museum. And maybe we don't care and maybe we can bypass that, but that's not what I'm
I
hearing.
don't know.
I'm totally supporting looking into it.
Yeah.
I totally,
Yes.
like, I
Yeah.
agree with all of you, but
Yeah.
we'll find out. So, but I also really believe in subcommittee action between meetings.
Yes.
Sure.
And that's why I'm pushing to say, let's
No,
get a
that's-
subcommittee going, let's get going with that. It's, you know, we gotta do everything at these meetings. I think it's gonna take a long time.
Outreach,
Can I ask it?
and, you know,
Supposing, let's say, I become there's a subcommittee fundraising, okay? And is it okay for me to recruit other people to help me who are not on this committee? I mean,
Certainly, when we get to that point, but right now, we're not asking for any
Sure.
fundraising to be done. It's-
that was just,
Yeah.
Yes.
that was just an example, like,
Yeah.
to say, okay.
Yeah.
So,
If council approves it and we move forward with this, then you would be able to recruit
okay.
members from the public to do fundraising and sit on the fundraising committee and things.
Grant reports and that, or grant application, and that, okay.
But that would be much
That's
further down the road.
After acceptance?
That would be if council approves
Okay.
the move.
Well, what about the operation plan? We have to have that one done ahead of time. I'd go on that one.
So how many committees do you think there are, how many?
There's 3 committees, right?
I would expect.
I mean, and actually, the when we get to fundraising,
Yeah,
like,
let's-
I can jump to fundraising too, right?
Yeah,
We
we
can all
all can.
help.
We can all jump on, we probably all will be on fundraising.
We just need somebody sort of leading.
Yeah.
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 So
And it's
there's,
just a plan that they're asking for,
okay,
okay, on how fundraising would be done.
Right.
Yeah, it's not that they're asking you to actually do the fundraising, it's put together a plan.
Okay.
Are we to be looking at pros and cons? Or are we just assuming that the artifacts at that museum will be moved to the train station if the train station meets the guidelines?
Well, isn't that really what council was
That's
looking
what I
at?
thought, that we were to be
If it
investigating
doesn't
pros
meet
and cons.
Their plan and the funding and so on, then it won't happen. But if we come up with a plan that shows that it will be feasible, then they'll accept it.
Yeah.
is that right? Because like, so there, let's say you wanted, council said no, then there'd be the cost of deaccessioning every single item.
Mhm.
Okay, so have they,
Yes.
is that what, they want that figure too?
The cost of deaccessioning every item?
If you decide they don't want a museum, see what I mean? Do they want that costed too?
It's not dramatic.
I
No,
don't-
it's not dramatic.
They already have a
No.
number they're kicking around,
Okay,
Yeah.
$20,000.
thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
So, when Doug came forward with the volunteers to a council meeting and made a presentation, the presentation was on, was in support of moving
Okay,
the
Yes.
museum program
So-
to the train station
okay.
and things. That was the whole purpose of the presentation, was to show that there was community support for that. So council's willing to look at it, not really the pros and cons, but okay, community, if you wanted to
How are you gonna make it happen?
how are you gonna make it happen? That's exactly it,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Yeah,
We're-
what's it
we're-
gonna
we're
cost us?
just sort of
Yes.
Yeah.
shaping this,
No,
helps
yeah,
clarify.
so that's where they're at, they wanna know how it would be done.
That's what it says right at the top of the page. The committee shall facilitate the relocation of the museum to the former train station.
Yeah.
By reducing project costs with the provision of volunteer resources and undertaking fundraising initiatives.
So
On
they,
the
they
terms of
want
reference.
you to figure out how you can make it happen.
Right.
Okay,
Does that help?
it does,
Yeah.
yes, it does.
So I suggest, Mr. Chair, that we get two committees organized here.
Yes.
So,
So who's on the project plan? Doug, and was it Judy?
yeah, Judy,
Jody.
Jody
Oh,
Jerome.
Jody.
Jerome.
Jodi, Jody Jerome.
Um,
Just the two of you?
Well, no, I'd like to see some more expertise on the, from the Friends of the Museum.
Sure, I don't mind on that, on the operation committee, Vern and I, and anyone else. I'm not much on the.
So then, is there one Friends of the Museum that could join the project? Because we could use the project plan, we could use somebody that has, I would love to have somebody else that has expertise, because I've never had anything with the museum before.
So, sure, well then, no, I'll go.
You go with that, okay?
So Jody, Doug, and Bill.
Sorry, we're sort of mucking around here, but.
Yeah.
So the operation plan then is Elizabeth French Gibson, Verna? Is it her name?
Pardon me? Who else going on?
Elizabeth French Gibson, I heard, and Verna for the
Does
operation.
she have to be asked?
Elizabeth
Yeah.
would be, she'd have to ask her, she'd be more like
Yeah.
a
Consultant.
resource.
So
She's the
Elizabeth.
resource, yeah.
The,
Yeah.
The curator of the
But
garden.
they're mandated,
Okay.
one of their mandates now under the new vision for the museum and, Huron County Museum is to outreach with communities that need help.
Beautiful,
So I love that.
Mhm,
that's good.
mhm.
So Verna needs
Well,
Two
I'll
people.
volunteer for that.
Dixie, all right?
I'm glad to volunteer for anything. I am.
Absolutely.
But
I was,
I think we're at a baseline level, and I think we've got to get it in there and get it sorted.
Well, I really think too that this, we need somebody from the barn dance.
Oh, that's
Isn't
the.
that Dave?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you, I forgot what that can come, take up the whole display as well.
Yes.
There's somebody
Oh, he's
Oh,
not.
I'm sorry.
over there.
Oh, Mr. Baxter?
He's retired. And so is Dave.
We'll let Dave handle it.
What's this?
We'll let Dave handle it.
We're
Dave,
gonna let Dave handle it.
he would likely accept.
He's on the committee. I
Yeah,
would think
sure,
he'd
you
accept
can
it.
ask
accept.
us, the representative.
And sorry, Lou, where did you put your name? I wasn't sure.
I didn't put it
Oh, I'm
anyplace
sorry.
special, but I'll put it wherever you want me. Wherever you're in need of.
Where do you want it?
What about, we still have the accreditation of museums, did that fall under?
Go ahead.
We're gonna look at that, the project plan will look at the requirements, because we'll have Jody. So
Yes.
we have that resource there.
John, go ahead.
I'm not sure where I would fit museum-wise, but I have 30 years of experience in project management.
And you're fundraising.
All that.
Well, under the
That's later.
operation,
Yeah, true.
Well, then, Joan, why don't you come on and look after this committee?
For the operational, I don't have experience
Oh,
with museum,
but-
I have,
Where's
Project
but
planning.
it does talk about
Yes, she is.
funding model
Oh, Ricky.
and a governance model.
mhm.
So
That could
I
be-
suspect
that
you have
sounds good.
some quite a bit of expertise there that you can, does that make
We could try
sense?
that,
So
yeah.
John will,
I'm
okay.
not gonna check it, but,
And Lou, who's taking Lou? She said
Lou is a gem,
I know.
so
She knows
you're
it.
lucky to get her,
Yes.
whoever.
Where do you just need another name for a start? Where do you need
What do you
that
need to be
person,
up
a
there?
person?
1, 2,
You don't have to
3,
listen.
4, 5.
Okay, well then, you want you to join us then with the project plan?
Okay, that's
Dave
fine.
was project plan, Lou's was project plan,
I'm looking at that, yeah.
and he was with you, right?
So it's
Yeah.
Doug, Jody, and Bill, and Lou.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Bill, Doug, to Jody.
The
are gonna be
operation is
Project plan.
Irma,
Where is-
Elizabeth, Dave, Dixie, and Joan.
So you've got, we each have a facilitator or a person who has background knowledge.
So-
And I'd gladly beat up, I'll gladly beat up the project plan. That's that committee.
Who's the other person
Okay,
that's not on?
That's what I'm just
Lou,
bringing up
Brock.
now, we want
Brock.
to put Mr.
Brock.
Bob.
Rock, yes.
And
Brock.
where would he fit in that, would you know, Bill? What
Like,
would-
not everybody has to be on a subcommittee.
That's
true. Okay.
Like, you don't have to,
Yeah.
like,
Okay, well,
Wait until we
Who
meet him.
he comes,
we're just gonna get, kind of scratch the surface here between now and the
Yeah.
next meeting.
And
So on the next agenda, maybe I'll put the project plan update and operational plan update on the next one.
it would not be that much. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
oh, I'm sorry,
no, that's okay. Do we need to approach Elizabeth French Gibson, or has she been asked already?
You'll need to approach her.
I'm quite comfortable doing that, I've worked with her on projects.
okay, oh,
Okay.
perfect, perfect, thank you, Joe. If I'm in contact with Ms. Gibson.
I think before we leave here, we ought to try and set up meeting dates for the individual committees, as well as what we
Okay.
need for our whole committee.
Are we to meet like?
Do we have a leader in each of those groups? Just so somebody is taking charge of being in contact with other people?
Yeah, that'll be me for the project one. I'll
Okay,
be
that,
the coordinator
all
for our
right, that
committee.
is the
And you're
chair.
gonna be for your committee, Courtney?
I can, yeah,
Verna for
Um,
operation professional.
So with our group, I gotta reach out to Jody first,
Yes.
see when she's available. And then what is daytime fine with you? Preferred daytime? Okay. So we'll email around and get that going as soon as possible, actually.
Then Joan will look after the
Yeah.
Okay,
Do we have to meet monthly, or like, is there a schedule,
It
is
is
there our own?
Which we need to determine.
so is Thursday a good day for, does that work good? You're the farthest away, so.
Oh, listen, don't, I'll make it. I'll make it.
The
Any
second
day.
last Thursday around this time
Sure.
too? Does that work for
Let's-
everyone?
That would be the 19th of September.
That'd be 26th.
Oh, 26th?
Second last.
Second last would be the 19th.
Oh, the second last.
Yeah.
Okay, that's.
That's a day before my birthday.
Here it's a,
Oh, we're
It's a-
supposed to bring a few, aren't we?
I heard you, Bill.
10 years old too.
You didn't even say it.
Yeah, we won't just cancel. Okay.
I'll burn the place
The
down.
struck plan's on the Tuesday, Wednesday. The struck plan is on Tuesday.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so clear.
So the whole committee is then on,
Yeah.
The second last Thursday of the
Thursday of the
month
month.
at 2.
are we gonna do that every month then, the
We're
second
supposed
last?
to, yeah, if
If
that,
at all
if
possible.
that's working.
It
Why
works.
not?
It sounds good if we do that, because then you
Yeah,
just
fit into it.
automatically
Yeah,
mark it
that's,
off.
Yeah, okay.
And it's 2 to 4 all the time?
Yes.
That works with everyone?
yeah,
Perfect.
All right with everyone, 2 to 4?
So the third Thursday of the month.
Mhm.
The third Thursday.
Well, I go
Well,
second last
Second last.
because there's sometimes,
Oh crap, my computer doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So that's my
Got
third.
mine in.
Well, can we not just go with the third? It's just
1, 2,
the
3.
third Thursday, 1, 2, 3, don't count the bottom up. count
Well, in
top down.
October, that would change it,
That'd be the 17th of October.
but the rest of the months.
so we wanna do the third Thursday in the month.
I like counting from the top
Yeah?
down,
Sure.
Yeah,
that's
Does that
okay.
work with everyone? Third Thursday?
yes.
17th of October,
Third Thursday of the month, monthly,
21st of November.
that's just
Thursday's
2 to
not
4,
good.
right?
Yeah,
Third
that
Thursday.
was confirmed there.
Okay.
I don't even have it written down.
Dixon, is Thursday not good for you?
Oh, yes, it's
Oh.
just that, the 2 potential Thursdays in September I'll be out of the country, so.
and that's gonna happen,
Yeah,
like.
Yeah.
yeah,
we're
exactly,
gonna
yeah,
have-
but
Yeah,
otherwise,
for
yeah,
sure.
no, I can,
And then we got 19th of December.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, right?
Okay. So and then leaving it up to you two for looking after
Getting-
mini or
There's
whatever.
a subcommittee going.
Subcommittee.
Yes.
Subcommittee
Okay,
meeting,
that's
okay.
going.
So we're not gonna attempt to set those meetings now?
We
Oh,
can,
no,
Set if you want.
that'd be great, like if,
Well, if I'm gonna call Elizabeth, I need to
mhm,
be able to give her time and date.
Okay.
how are you guys for next Thursday?
Next Thursday,
How's that work for you?
29?
Or let's say just next week,
No.
is there any things that dates that don't work next
No.
week?
Tuesdays and Wednesdays don't work very well for Becky, right?
just that week.
Oh, just
On
that week, I'm
September,
sorry.
yeah, just
Okay.
that September week,
So
yeah.
I'm gone because that's the following week, the whole week, so.
It could be any time that day.
Next week then? Any days that don't work next week for ideas?
I'm away for the next 2 weeks.
Okay,
Okay.
I
so
leave tomorrow camping.
I'll try to get some stuff administrative on email.
But I'm available the 10th, 11th,
Only the Tuesday is, I'm unavailable.
Okay.
or the 17th and the 18th.
I'm not available Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursday mornings. I'm in Kitchener every week.
Afternoons,
Oh.
okay, afternoons are okay, sure.
Thursday afternoons are okay, or Mondays are okay, or Friday. Well, no, sorry, Friday's not either, not when school's in.
So it's
Monday
in the
afternoon
calendar.
or,
Monday afternoon's fine by me.
Monday anytime or
Well, I
Thursday
got
afternoons.
doctor recruitment in the morning on
Which one
Monday.
do you need?
I take it these meetings are gonna be at 2 o'clock, I take it, the same time, keep the time the
Do
same.
you want to meet here, Doug? Or,
It depends on availability.
Sure, or just-
I
Okay.
can check, you know now.
or
But I
anybody?
don't know the
It
date yet,
could be
Just give me an
I'll
email.
coordinate with you, so
Oh,
we can meet
anywhere
here,
at all you want.
and otherwise, you know,
Should we have an alternative date in case Elizabeth isn't available?
Yeah,
So are you thinking then?
I'm either the 9th or the,
Of course, we don't know about your.
what are you, Jetsy?
I
Doug,
can't
you
do
don't
the
know about
9th,
Jody
I have
anyway.
another meeting in
No,
Goderich
that's
at
actually
2 o'clock
with her
that
first.
same day.
So
Well,
I'll
then
email
what's
her
with
and say,
11th?
hey,
You
what's
said
the
Wednesday
dates kind of
afternoon?
available is-
No,
No.
I'm in Kitchener Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursday mornings.
Oh,
Jill,
well, Thursday's right out for me.
Oh, is she?
busy, busy, busy.
What about the 16th?
I'll be in England.
So it doesn't matter whether it's the 16th, 17th, well, you're always away on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you think?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's go with either the 9th or the 16th.
Either one.
Yeah, you find out from her.
I'll call
Elizabeth.
her and give her those 2 days then,
Yeah,
and we're looking at 2 o'clock.
yes.
And could you say the two dates again, just so we confirm everything?
9th or the 16th of September, 2 o'clock, here.
Or she could, you could go to Goderich, I suppose, if you had to, if she couldn't come here. but-
Yeah?
9th through the 16th, right? Vern?
Yes.
So I can offer to bring the
So the
meeting to her.
19th is good, the 16th
I don't see why not.
is
Yeah.
good.
I guess so, except for what if we don't have secretarial services then?
Yeah.
True.
And 16th. Well, for a.
Verna, could you say those
For a
two dates again?
subcommittee,
We
we
just
could-
wanna make sure here.
9 and 16,
Do you need a
9, yeah.
secretary?
when Elizabeth is
Subcommittee.
available.
Available.
So after 11,
Somebody
this
on the
room will be
committee.
free if you wanted it here.
Okay, well, we would be looking at 2 to 4, I think, as well.
Okay, do you want me to schedule you?
Tentatively.
Please.
Temporary, then you'll confer that with.
I'll call Elizabeth and call you.
Okay, now I'm going away tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for 2 weeks.
Okay. That's pressing. That's funny.
Well, Joan, could you?
I will, you don't have email,
Was it the same time?
do you?
Well, I do, but I'm not taking it with me.
Okay. I'm sorry,
Could you get back to?
Amanda, of course.
Super. That's what Dr. then?
And if not, leave the message on my machine.
Okay.
Here, you want to- Shall we-
And-
Did you have something?
Yeah, one question that Dixie raised about, do we need to have a secretary recording from the subcommittee minutes?
Well,
meetings?
there's no quorum, so,
Well, one of the group can do that, is that?
So we just,
yeah, I would think.
we just report back.
Why not? Yeah, I think
to
so.
the group.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of have somebody taking notes during our subcommittee meetings.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, we can't do
And
either
then
the 9th or the 16th.
If we can, we should probably submit those reports in advance of the meeting and
Mhm.
send them to you, so they can be included with the package.
Yes.
So then everybody knows in advance what the other committee has done and talked to them.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I send the agenda the Friday before the meeting, so everybody has the weekend to look over it, so if you can get me the reports, then they can be on the agenda.
Friday, or on the Thursday, kind of thing, get you the
Yep.
reports, so we start morning, please.
Is there used to be a governance group at the museum.
Like the Board of Management, you mean?
Well, there was a governance,
But it was disbanded.
I know it was, all I'm doing is looking for, did they have terms of reference?
Yes.
If they did, I'd sort of like a copy of them. The other one is, how is the museum being funded at the present time?
Museum program is not being funded at the present time, but the museum building is being paid for, the operation of the building is being paid
That's
for
what
by
I'm
the
looking for.
municipality.
That's what I'm looking for,
By the municipality.
what it's being costed.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's in the,
now.
yeah, it's in the municipal budget.
Because
It's
so if
online or
it's-
we can get it for you.
If it's not gonna be there, then it's gonna be there,
And the suspicion is that it will cost less than
yeah.
heating.
Oh, yes. But
Oh, yeah.
I'd sort of like to have what there already has been. I find it easier to adapt things than it is to try and think about what it might cost.
So I'll get you a copy of the budget for
Okay.
that building.
Are we assuming that Dave is going to be on the operational committee? Someone gonna call him and,
He's away, isn't he?
I don't even know
I
him.
can email him, I have his email address. He's
okay.
also on the theater committee, so is Dave Wall. And that's North Huron Museum Subcommittee. So I'll ask Dave if he's willing to stand on the museum operations committee.
Okay.
I'll CC you without any.
Thank you.
Okay, were there any more discussions?
I'd just like to ask one question, I may be way out of line here, but,
Oh, no, go ahead.
so it probably could be Amanda or Vicky. I would just like a recall of when council said they would be happy to move from across the road, up the road. Was there any comment, suggestion about the fact that the new building may not qualify as a museum? Did anybody think of that or talk about that at that time?
No, not at that time. That was part of the investigation that needed to happen at this committee level, I believe.
Okay,
Because at this point right now, there is no funding coming in from the government at all.
no, I
And
know
it's-
that.
Yeah, so, there
And I'm
there was-
going back to what you were just saying, Vicki, about whatever monies had been spent to look after across the road is still going on.
Yes.
Yes.
You're still gonna heat the building in the wintertime,
Mhm.
and you're still paying water rates
Mhm.
and all of that.
Insurance.
And insurance, yes.
And I'll send everybody a copy of the budget. It's available online, on the township's website and the municipal budget, but I'll make sure I pull that out and send it to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
We did have a small account of legacy money. Do you know about that?
I don't know about that, but I can look into it.
Okay, they were, remember that?
Yes.
And I don't know what it was called, but it was a line where bequests had been given from funerals and so on and it was to be spent on
Improving the
improving the
artifacts.
either artifact acquisition or display, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we don't want that to get buried.
It had been somewhere around
It's around
9,000.
8,000 or 9,000. But if that's put up front, that'll help us too.
I'll look into it, I'll talk to the treasurer.
Any more discussion? From anybody? Seeing none?
Do we have a time frame on this? Are we supposed to have something to council at a specific time? No? I thought I read somewhere 22.
Yeah,
That's
2022
what
is the end.
the
That-
council's
Maybe
mandate
deal with
was.
Linda.
I guess we're just banned.
That's
It'll take too long.
Yeah, I think,
And
We're
the
not
council
stuck.
would have to.
I prefer that we can do that before the end of term.
If we're meeting monthly. push it
Well,
along.
did it change? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, right, lane death, right.
Sooner the better.
Yeah, see, it's, yeah.
Okay, were there any other comments?
In this costing bit as well, you're talking about moving a building.
Yes,
Are we talking about that under the operation plan or only under fundraising? It's under your project plan.
project plan. The project plan is gonna come up with a cost. All the things need to be done and the cost. So we're talking shelving, furniture, window treatment for UV rays or whatever, that kind of stuff. Finding out what level of museum and what the costs are gonna be to do the different levels. So all that stuff, what I'm suspecting is that that's what we'll do. Then we know those costs. And I actually already did a costing on what it would cost to move the building, because I approached the
Yeah.
Barnet Society, they would fundraise to do that. So there is some general costs already in place that I did go to contractors and get costs on the various parts. So So yeah, that's
That's good.
good.
That's
part of
rough
the
on us.
plan. Just a heads up on the museum operation plan. I know one council member is very specific about there being a plan of this operating as a museum, about display changeouts and, you know, a viable museum that's gonna attract people to come again. So there is one council member, I'd say he's probably a wing board person, not mentioning names. But he's spoken to me different times about that, and that seems to be a real
Yeah,
important point
well,
to
you
him,
do,
is
you
that,
have to keep changing your displays,
yeah,
because otherwise people say, well, I've already been there.
yeah, yeah. So he will be asking about that as part of the museum operation plan.
And you're looking at incorporating an information center into the same building, right?
That was the discussion, yes.
Yeah, tourist information, or visitor information.
Yeah,
the way- Like basically the
Yeah.
person, the staff person sitting at the reception.
Exactly.
It's
gonna
been
have those-
No, it's a good
Have those
idea.
racks of, you know, all the brochures of things to do in the area,
Yeah,
and be able to answer questions and direct people and stuff like that, so that'll be there. I don't see a real cost component to that, right? It's just
no, it's one cost.
the
One
brochure,
person.
some brochure racks and
Okay,
the person's
Vicky
there.
would like to,
That's okay. Just through the chair, for those who are not aware, is that what had been discussed was that we would relocate a staff person from the recreation complex to that front area to be that person. So when Doug is saying that there would be no costs and things like that, that's where that staffing component was coming from, is
Yes.
that we were gonna relocate someone from there over to that center and things to do that type of thing.
And just like kind of dovetailing with that, as far as tour guides and stuff like that, and keeping the museum open on weekends, the idea would be to approach for funding for summer students, right?
Mhm.
That, you know, that are maybe educating in that area, and this is their opportunity to be the tour guide and work in the museum, so that the tourist season, summer months,
Yeah,
but we wouldn't be, the town wouldn't be laying money out for that. They'd be getting that through grants. And so we'd be looking at funding to do that. And then the rest is volunteer driven, just like the museum was before, right? You have a staff person that's there, that's the coordinator of volunteers, right, that's gonna help be the central person that's kind of in the middle, so there's not that kind of confusion. But then really the museum operation itself, as far as visitors coming in and wanting to look around, but that'll be part of, you know, what you guys look at on the museum operation side of things. Town is definitely not looking to spend money.
so, anything else? If anything comes to your mind, just give you half a minute and, then I'll let you speak, that would be great. Discovered that one? Okay,
You need a motion to adjourn or?
yeah, I'm just coming up to that
Oh,
now.
okay.
So do I have a mover for adjournment?
sure.
A whole bunch.
I always
Joan.
meant to adjourn.
All in favor?
All in favor? Yes.
3:13.
Well,
Hey, we're
It
doing
looks-
good.